The galaxy had never known a civilization as powerful as the Zalari. For thousands of years, their fleets had ruled hundreds of star systems without opposition. Their ships were enormous, armed with weapons that could tear planets apart, and their armies were guided by artificial intelligence so advanced that no living mind could match them. Every alien race they met bowed in fear. Every rebellion ended in flames. In their eyes, the galaxy was theirs, and nothing could change that. On a small, forgotten corner of the galaxy, humans lived quietly. Their colonies were tiny, scattered across rocky planets and frozen moons. Compared to the Zalari, humans were almost invisible. Most of the galaxy ignored them. The Zalari called them primitive insects, too weak to be worth any attention. Yet, the humans were different. They had survived against harsh planets, starving environments, and countless disasters. They adapted. They learned. They grew stronger in ways no one expected. It all began when the Zalari noticed a human scout ship near the edge of their territory. The ship was small, almost fragile, and the aliens could hardly believe it carried living beings. On the bridge of the Zalari flagship, Admiral Tikir laughed as he examined the human vessel. A single human scout? Pathetic. I will destroy it with one shot, he said, his voice full of arrogance. Below him, his officers nodded in agreement. The humans were nothing. They had no fleets, no weapons that mattered, no knowledge of the galaxy. This would be an easy victory. But the humans did something no one expected. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, the human captain, a young woman named Mara, calmly sent a signal. It was simple, just coordinates and a few words. We see you. TKR raised an eyebrow. What is this? Some kind of joke, he asked. Mara's message had no fear, no plea for mercy. It was bold, almost insolent, and that boldness marked the first crack in the Zalari arrogance. The humans were not just observers. They were learning. They watched the Zalari fleet move with precision, recording every maneuver, every strategy, every weakness. Mara's crew knew they could not defeat the Zalari head-on, but they didn't need to. Humans had something the Zalari had never faced before: unpredictability. Days passed, and the Zalari grew frustrated. Every attempt to provoke the humans ended in failure. The small scout ship always avoided destruction in ways that seemed impossible. The aliens began whispering among themselves. Perhaps these humans were more than just primitive creatures. Back on Earth, the human colonies were unaware of the attention they were attracting. They were busy with everyday life, mining, farming, exploring. But Mara and her crew had a mission. They were gathering knowledge, understanding the enemy, and preparing for something much larger. Mara looked at her crew, a mix of young men and women who had trained their whole lives for survival. Their eyes were bright with determination. She knew the galaxy would never take them seriously, but that was exactly the advantage they had. The Zalari expected weakness, and the humans planned to use that expectation against them. Remember, Mara said quietly, they think we are nothing. That is our power. We survive because they do not expect it. As the humans continued their careful observation, the Zalari fleet prepared to make a demonstration of power. They wanted to scare the humans into submission. A single Zalari destroyer moved toward the human scout ship, its weapons ready to fire. Mara's heart pounded, but she remained calm. The crew had a plan, one that relied not on strength, but on ingenuity. They maneuvered their small ship into an asteroid field, using the environment as a shield. The Zalari weapons struck the rocks around them, sending debris flying, but the humans emerged unscathed. TKRS officers were stunned. How is this possible? One of them asked, disbelief in his voice. Humans, they adapt, TKR muttered, a frown crossing his features for the first time. This was the first lesson Zalari would learn. Humans were not predictable. They did not follow patterns. They did not fear death in the same way other species did. Where other civilizations would surrender or flee, humans found ways to survive, to fight, to turn the odds in their favor. As the days passed, the humans continued their quiet campaign. They sabotaged supply lines, disrupted communication networks, and made small victories that annoyed the Zalari more than they could admit. Every time the aliens thought they had the humans cornered, the humans found a new escape, a new tactic, a new way to turn the tables. The turning point came during a battle near the moon of Vexor 9. The Zolari fleet had surrounded a human colony, preparing to annihilate it as an example. The humans inside were terrified, but Mara had prepared them. "Trust the plan," she told them. "Do exactly what I say and we will survive." Using small, homemade devices, the humans created explosions that confused the Zolari sensors. They hacked communication networks in ways the aliens did not expect, sending false signals of reinforcements and escape routes. The Zolari fleet hesitated, unsure which direction to fire. That hesitation was all the humans needed. They struck key points in the enemy formation, creating chaos. TKR watched from his flagship, disbelief written across his face. How can such weak creatures cause so much damage? He wondered aloud. The humans did not win a battle in a traditional sense. They did not destroy the Zolari fleet, but they had achieved something far greater. They had survived. They had humiliated the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, and they had sent a message. Humans were not to be underestimated. Word of the human success spread quickly across the galaxy. Other alien races began to whisper about them. Could it be that these so-called primitive humans were something more? Could it be that the legends about the Zolari's invincibility were false? Back on the human scout ship, Mara smiled quietly. She knew the battle was only the beginning. The Zolari would come for them, again and again. But each time, the humans would learn, adapt, and grow stronger. "This is only the start," she said, looking at the stars. "They think we are nothing. Soon they will learn the truth." And so, the first turning point in galactic history was set. A small, primitive human crew had defied the mightiest civilization the galaxy had ever known. They had survived where others would have perished. They had turned fear into courage, weakness into strategy, and the Zolari's arrogance into doubt. The galaxy had watched the rise of a new force, one that no one could ignore. The humans were no longer insignificant. The question was no longer whether they could survive, but how far they could go. And far they would go. The human survival against the Zolari had caused a stir across the galaxy. News traveled slowly at first, carried by curious traders and explorers. But once it reached the ears of other civilizations, it sparked disbelief. How could a species so small, so fragile, survive against the most advanced empire in history? Back on the front lines, the Zolari commanders were furious. Admiral TKR paced the bridge of his flagship, his massive claws tapping against the floor. His pride had been wounded, and in the Zolari mind, nothing could go unpunished. "These humans are foolish," TKR hissed. "They survive by chance. They are weak. Destroy them before they think they are clever." But TKR's officers began to hesitate. Reports came in from every corner of the battle zone. Small human ships, barely noticeable, were interfering with supply lines. Alien patrols sent to scout human colonies were returning empty-handed, or worse, reporting heavy damage to their own forces. The humans did not fight like other species. They disappeared and reappeared, struck where it hurt most, then vanished before the Zolari could respond. Meanwhile, Mara's crew was preparing for something bigger. The humans were not just surviving, they were learning. Every encounter with the Zolari taught them more about the Empire's technology, strategy, and weaknesses. Mara stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the stars. Around her, the crew worked silently but efficiently. Every crew member knew their role. Every decision was calculated. The humans were not strong in the traditional sense. Their ships were small, their weapons limited. But they had something the Zolari could never predict: creativity. "Remember," Mara reminded them, "we do not fight like they expect. We strike where they are weak, and we vanish before they can strike back. That is our strength." The next encounter was inevitable. A Zolari warship detected a human colony near the planet Zeta 14. The aliens assumed it would be a simple operation: destroy the humans, collect the survivors as slaves, and continue their conquest. They underestimated the humans once more. The Zolari fleet descended like a shadow over the colony. Their massive ships blocked out the sunlight, casting enormous darkness across the planet. The humans on the surface froze, seeing the overwhelming enemy above them. Yet Mara's voice echoed through the colony's communication channels. "Do not panic. Follow our instructions. You will survive." The humans had prepared for this moment. They had built hidden bunkers, traps, and defensive devices. Unlike other races, humans understood one crucial truth. Survival was more important than pride. They would live to fight another day, no matter the cost. As the Zalari opened fire, expecting immediate destruction, the humans executed a plan no one could have imagined. They activated decoy signals, creating hundreds of false targets across the planet. The Zalari weapons struck again and again, only hitting illusions. Meanwhile, small human fighters launched surprise attacks from hidden positions, sabotaging alien energy generators and disabling critical systems. Admiral Tikara's patience snapped. He roared orders, demanding a focus attack. But every attempt failed. The humans adapted faster than the Zalari could anticipate. Every strike the Zalari planned was countered with cunning tactics. Impossible, Tikar muttered. These humans, they are not like the others. They think, they adapt, they survive. For the humans, victory in this battle was not about destruction. It was about survival and sending a message. They had proven that even when facing overwhelming power, intelligence and courage could tip the scales. After the battle, Mara called her crew together. "We have survived," she said, "but surviving is not enough. We need to grow stronger. We need to understand them better. They are powerful, but every power has a weakness." The crew nodded. Every mission, every encounter, every tiny victory added to their knowledge. Humans were not just learning, they were evolving. But the Zalari were not idle. Across their empire, councils convened. Scientists, strategists, and generals debated the humans' true nature. Some argued that humans were insignificant, that luck had allowed them to survive. Others whispered their cunning, their unpredictability, and the strange way they adapted. One alien scientist, a tall figure with translucent skin, spoke cautiously. "We have underestimated them," she said. "Their survival is not random. They plan, they learn, and they strike in ways we cannot predict. If we continue to ignore them, they will grow stronger." TKR scowled. "Nonsense. They are primitive. Nothing more. One more strike and they will fall." But even he could feel the shift. Every encounter with humans left him uneasy. They survived where others would have perished. They turned the most hopeless situations into opportunities. And most frightening of all, they seemed to learn with every mistake the Zalari made. Meanwhile, Mara's crew discovered a new advantage. The humans' greatest strength was not their ships or weapons. It was their mind. They saw connections others missed, found solutions in the most impossible situations, and used the Zalari's own arrogance against them. "They think they are gods," Mara said quietly. "They do not understand us. That is why we survive." The next mission would test humans like never before. They had to make contact with another human colony deep inside Zalari territory. If they succeeded, it would show the galaxy that humans were not just survivors. They were becoming a force. The journey was dangerous. Every light year brought new threats. Zalari patrols scanned every sector, looking for signs of human movement. But humans move like shadows. They slipped through patrols, avoided detection, and used every trick they had learned. Finally, they reached the colony. The humans there had prepared defenses, but they were terrified. Mara's ship landed silently, and she went straight to the colony leaders. "We are here to help," she said. "Follow our instructions, and we will survive together." The plan was simple but brilliant. The humans would use the colony as a base to gather intelligence, create diversions, and prepare for the next encounter with the Zalari. They did not seek to destroy the Empire. Not yet. They sought to survive, adapt, and grow stronger with every battle. As Mara coordinated the colony's defenses, the humans discovered something unexpected. Zalari technology, though advanced, had weaknesses. Their sensors could be tricked, their communications hacked, and their strategies predicted if one observed them carefully. Humans did what humans always did. They learned, adapted, and prepared. "Every weakness we find," Mara told her crew, "is a step toward survival. Every victory, no matter how small, is proof that we are stronger than they believe." Days passed, and the Zalari noticed that human colonies were no longer easy targets. Mara's crew had taught them to hide, to fight smart, and to use the galaxy itself as a shield. For the first time, the Zalari felt hesitation. Their confidence, which had lasted for thousands of years, was beginning to crumble. They survive because they think differently, TKR admitted privately. We cannot predict them. We cannot control them. And that is dangerous. The humans, on the other hand, were growing bolder. Small victories turned into confidence. They realized that they were capable of more than survival. They were capable of challenging the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. One night, as Mara watched the stars from the bridge of her ship, she felt a strange calm. The Zalari were powerful, yes, but humans had something they could never have: resilience, creativity, and courage. She knew that the coming battles would be dangerous, but she also knew one truth: humans would never give up. They think they can crush us, Mara said softly. They do not know us yet, and they will learn one way or another. The galaxy had changed. Humans were no longer insignificant. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that could survive, adapt, and strike in ways no one expected. The first contact with the Zalari had shown the humans' hidden strengths, and the Empire had no idea what was coming next. And in that quiet moment, Mara realized the most important truth of all: survival was only the beginning. The humans' victories against the Zalari were small but powerful. Each encounter was a lesson. Each escape was a proof of their adaptability. And slowly, the galaxy began to notice humans were no longer invisible. They were becoming a mystery, a puzzle even the most powerful civilization could not solve. Admiral TKR could feel it. The arrogance that had guided the Zalari for millennia was cracking. Reports from his officers came in hourly. Supply ships damaged, patrol fleets ambushed, strategic points sabotaged. Each human move was unpredictable, clever, and devastating in ways the Zalari could not anticipate. How did they do it? TKR growled in frustration. How can a species so weak, so small, cause such chaos? On the other side, Mara and her crew had discovered something even more important. Humans had a natural advantage. They were small, yes, and their ships were weak compared to the Zalari dreadnoughts. But humans had one thing the Zalari did not: imagination. Strength is not always about size, Mara told her crew as they huddled around the ship's navigation table. It is about thinking differently, seeing opportunities where others see danger. That is what makes us strong. The next operation would put this advantage to the test. Humans had discovered an Zalari communications hub on a barren planet. It controlled fleets across several systems, coordinating attacks and spying on colonies. Destroying it would not win a war, but it would level the playing field, at least slightly. Mara's team devised a plan unlike anything the Zalari had seen. They would not attack head-on. They would not fire a single shot from range. Instead, they would infiltrate the planet using small, nearly invisible crafts, slip past Zalari patrols, and plant devices that would disable the hub. Every move was calculated, every risk measured. When they arrived, the Zalari assumed the humans would panic, hide, or surrender. But the humans were calm, almost serene. They moved like shadows, using the terrain, the weather, and even the planet's natural storms to their advantage. Sensors that should have detected them failed. Weapons aimed at their position fired into empty air. Inside the hub, the humans worked with quiet precision. Mara guided them step by step, bypassing security systems, using their knowledge of Zalari technology to exploit every weakness. Within hours, the communications hub was crippled. Zalari fleets in nearby systems went dark, unable to coordinate. When the aliens realized what had happened, it was too late. The humans had vanished, leaving only confusion and chaos behind. This small act of sabotage was a turning point. For the first time, the Zalari realized that humans were not just survivors. They were dangerous. They do not fight like the others, muttered TKR to his officers. They are clever, too clever. The humans' advantage was more than strategy. It was adaptability. Wherever they went, they learned quickly. A failed attack was not a loss. It was a lesson. Every mistake taught them how to fight smarter. Every encounter with the Zalari made them stronger, more confident, and more unpredictable. Humans also had something the Zalari lacked: unity. While the Empire relied on obedience, rules, and rigid hierarchy, humans relied on trust, cooperation, and instinct. They worked together, combining ideas in ways the Zalari could never imagine. This allowed humans to turn even the most hopeless situations into opportunities. One of the Zalari generals, a massive creature named Vorith, decided to test the humans directly. He led a fleet twice the size of Mara's small squadron, expecting an easy victory. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. It should have been a slaughter, but Mara was ready. Using every trick she had learned, she divided the fleet into small, unpredictable groups. Some ships created decoy signals, drawing Vorith's fire away. Others launched surprise attacks from unexpected angles. The humans used asteroids as cover, solar flares to hide their movements, and even gravity anomalies to their advantage. Vorith's fleet, despite its superior numbers and firepower, could not predict the humans. Every attack they made was countered. Every plan they executed failed. Chaos spread through the Zalari ranks, and for the first time, the aliens felt fear. "This is impossible," Vorith shouted. "How can they survive? How can they win?" The humans did not win by destroying Vorith's fleet. That was not their goal. They won by surviving, by forcing the enemy to retreat, by proving that even the most powerful forces could be challenged with intelligence, creativity, and teamwork. Mara looked at the stars after the battle, her crew tired but triumphant. "We are learning faster than they can adapt," she said. "And that is our real power." Back on the Zalari flagship, T-Care convened a council. Scientists, strategists, and generals gathered, all desperate for answers. "We cannot predict them," admitted one officer. "Every encounter reveals a new tactic. Every move they make is unexpected." "Then we must adapt faster," T-Care said. "We must destroy them before they grow stronger." But even he felt the doubt creeping in. Humans were not like any other race the Zalari had encountered. They survived impossible odds, turned weakness into strength, and learned from every failure. They were evolving in real time, becoming more dangerous with each passing day. Meanwhile, Mara's crew prepared for the next phase. The humans had realized that they could not simply survive. They had to take the initiative. They began planning raids, diversions, and missions designed to weaken the Zalari's control across multiple systems. Each operation was small but effective, striking fear into the hearts of aliens who had never known fear before. "We are not just fighting to survive," Mara told her crew. "We are showing them that they underestimated us, that they cannot control us, that we are more than they ever imagined." The humans' advantage became more apparent as time passed. While the Zalari relied on predictable strategies, humans thrived on unpredictability. Where the aliens saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities. Where the aliens saw rules, humans found loopholes. Where the aliens saw fear, humans saw courage. In one daring mission, a human squadron infiltrated a heavily defended Zalari shipyard. Using stealth ships and clever tactics, they disabled several of the Empire's most advanced warships. The Zalari were stunned. Their pride had been shattered. The humans, once considered primitive, had now struck at the very heart of the Empire's power. "We must understand them," T-Care said, his voice low and tense. "We cannot underestimate humans again." But it was too late. Humans were already evolving. Every encounter made them smarter, faster, and more confident. Every victory, no matter how small, inspired colonies across the galaxy. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and a symbol of resistance against the Empire's arrogance. Mara watched as messages from distant colonies arrived, reporting similar successes. Humans were uniting, learning from one another and spreading their influence. Their small victories were adding up, and the Zalari could no longer ignore them. "This is only the beginning," Mara said, her eyes shining with determination. "They think we are weak. They think we are simple. Soon, they will see that humans are unstoppable." And so, the stage was set for the next chapter of the conflict. Humans had discovered their advantage: intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and unity. The Zalari, despite their power, were struggling to respond. Every human victory, every clever tactic, every escape, chipped away at the Empire's confidence. The galaxy had changed. Humans were no longer the insignificant species everyone had dismissed. They were evolving, learning, and preparing to challenge the very foundation of the most powerful civilization in history. The humans' advantage was clear. They could survive, adapt, and strike in ways the Zalari could not predict. And as Mara looked toward the stars, she knew one thing for certain. The humans' journey had only just begun. The Empire's greatest threat was not numbers, not weapons, not technology. It was humans themselves, and the humans had only begun to reveal what they were capable of. The humans' clever tactics had done more than surprise the Zalari. They had shaken the foundations of the Empire itself. Across hundreds of star systems, whispers spread like wildfire. A small, primitive species was not only surviving, they were winning. Humans were no longer seen as insignificant. They were a threat. Admiral TK paced the bridge of his flagship, a storm of fury and disbelief in his massive frame. Reports from every corner of the Empire painted the same picture. Zalari fleets defeated in ways no one could predict, supply lines destroyed, communication hubs sabotaged. The humans were everywhere, yet nowhere. Their strikes were swift, precise, and devastating, leaving no pattern behind. They are not just surviving, TK growled. They are destroying us piece by piece. We cannot fight ghosts, and yet they haunt us. But Mara and her crew had been preparing for this moment for months. They had studied every Zalari tactic, learned every predictable move, and turned every weakness into a weapon. The humans were no longer reacting. They were taking initiative. The turning point came near the planet Karoth. The humans had gathered several colonies in a hidden network, sharing intelligence, resources, and strategies. Mara stood on the bridge of her flagship, surrounded by a fleet of ships far smaller than the Zalari armada they were about to face. But the humans were confident. They had a plan that relied on ingenuity, unity, and unpredictability. Remember, Mara said, her voice calm but firm. We are small, yes, but we are clever. We do not fight them as they expect. We fight them as we must. Strike fast, disappear, and hit where it hurts most. Today we turn the tide. The Zalari armada arrived, a terrifying display of power. Their ships blotted out the stars, weapons bristling, engines roaring. To any ordinary species, this fleet would have been impossible to defeat. But the humans did not see it as a threat. They saw an opportunity. The first human strike was subtle. Small squads of fighters darted between massive Zalari vessels, exploiting blind spots in their formation. Mara had coordinated the attacks so that the Zalari would fire at nothing, wasting energy and creating chaos within their ranks. Decoy ships created illusions of reinforcements, drawing enemy fire away from real targets. In the midst of the chaos, the humans launched sabotage drones into Zalari warships. These small machines infiltrated critical systems, disabling weapons, engines, and communication links. The Zalari, despite their advanced technology, were unable to predict or stop the attacks. Admiral TK roared in frustration. Impossible. How can they do this again and again? But Mara had not finished. Using every human advantage, stealth, intelligence, and adaptability, she coordinated a strike on the command ship. Her small team infiltrated the massive vessel, bypassing security systems that had never been breached before. Every move was precise, every action calculated. The humans did not destroy the ship outright. That was unnecessary. They disabled its engines and weapons, leaving the flagship vulnerable and sending a clear message. The humans could reach anywhere, strike anything, and escape. Across the battlefield, Zalari morale collapsed. Fleets that had never known defeat faltered, their formation breaking apart under the humans' unpredictable assault. Panic spread to the armada like wildfire. For the first time in millennia, the most powerful civilization in galactic history faced real fear. On the planet Karoth, human colonies cheered. The news spread quickly through the network of human settlements. The Zalari flagship had been neutralized and the armada was in retreat. What had begun as survival had turned into a full-scale rebellion. We are stronger than they believed, Mara said quietly, watching the stars. And we are just beginning. The fall of the Zalari did not happen overnight. It was a series of clever strikes, bold tactics, and the humans' ability to think where the Empire could not. They attacked supply chains, communication networks, and fleet gatherings. Every victory, no matter how small, undermined the Zalari's control and spread fear across their ranks. One of the most shocking moments came during the Battle of Vera 5. The Zalari had gathered a massive fleet to crush a human colony they believed to be weak. But Mara had anticipated this. Using a network of decoys, ambushes, and human ingenuity, the humans turned the battle into a trap. Small ships attacked from unexpected angles, disabling key weapons. Mining drones hidden in asteroid belts detonated at critical points, creating chaos. The Zalari fleet, despite its size and firepower, fell into disarray. Ships collided, weapons misfired, and communication broke down. By the end of the battle, the Zalari were forced to retreat. They had lost hundreds of ships and thousands of soldiers. For the first time in history, humans had achieved a victory the Zalari could not easily explain or accept. TKR convened his council. Generals argued, scientists speculated, and officers panicked. They are not just lucky, one officer admitted. They are learning faster than we can adapt. Then we must destroy them completely, TKR barked. No mercy, no hesitation. Every human must fall. But it was too late. Humans had become more than a small species fighting for survival. They had become a symbol, a force that inspired colonies across the galaxy. Every system they saved, every victory they achieved, encouraged others to rise against the Zalari. Mara knew the humans' advantage lay not in brute force, but in strategy. They could not match the Zalari in sheer power, but they could outthink them. Every battle was a lesson, every loss a preparation for the next strike. Humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and united in ways the Empire could not understand. They underestimate us because they see us as weak, Mara said to her crew. But we survive because we are clever. We strike where they are blind, and we never stop learning. The humans' rebellion spread like wildfire. Colonies that had once hidden in fear now rose with courage. Trade routes controlled by the Zalari were intercepted. Strategic outposts were reclaimed. Every victory weakened the Empire, and every human action proved that the Zalari's rule was not absolute. On the Zalari homeworld, news of the losses caused chaos. Leaders argued, generals blamed one another, and panic spread among the population. For thousands of years, the Empire had known nothing but control. Now, for the first time, they faced the possibility of defeat. Mara and her crew watched the galaxy change. They had started as a small, insignificant species, fighting to survive against impossible odds. Now, they were a growing force, challenging the most powerful civilization in history. Their victories were not just tactical, they were symbolic. Humans had proven that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the greatest power. This is what happens when they underestimate us, Mara said. They believed we were weak. They believed we could be crushed. But they forgot one thing. Humans never give up. The fall of the Zalari was not complete, but the Empire's power had been shattered. Humans had shown the galaxy that the impossible was possible. They had turned fear into courage, weakness into strategy, and survival into victory. And the galaxy watched in awe as a new era began. An era where humans, once considered primitive, were now the rising force that could challenge even the most powerful empire the stars had ever known. The Empire had fallen, piece by piece, and humans had shown their greatest advantage: intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and courage. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. And Mara knew one truth for certain. The humans' journey was only beginning. The Empire had fallen, but greater challenges awaited. And when those challenges came, humans would face them, not as survivors, but as conquerors in their own right. The galaxy had changed forever. Once, humans were dismissed as weak, fragile, and primitive. Now, they were the force that no empire could ignore. Across countless star systems, alien races whispered of their cunning, their courage, and their ability to survive where others would fall. Humans had become legends, not because of their size, not because of their weapons, but because of their mind, their unity, and their will. Mara stood on the bridge of her flagship, gazing out at the stars. The fleet behind her was small compared to the remnants of the Zalari armadas, but it was more than enough. Every ship carried humans who had learned, adapted, and survived. Every crew member had a story of overcoming impossible odds. Together, they were unstoppable. We did not destroy them, Mara said quietly to her first officer, Jaren. We showed them they cannot control us, and that is worth more than any victory. Jaren nodded. They will never see us the same way again. Across the galaxy, colonies that lived in fear now celebrated. Humans had liberated worlds, saved countless lives, and shown that even the smallest, most underestimated species could challenge a civilization that had ruled for thousands of years. Every victory inspired hope. Every story spread like wildfire. Humans had become symbols, not just warriors. But Mara knew the truth. Humans had not grown powerful through luck or chance. Every victory had been earned. Every lesson learned had been hard-won. Humans had adapted, studied, and evolved faster than any species the Zalari had faced. And that was what made them legends. The Zalari, once arrogant and untouchable, were now fractured. Their fleets were scattered. Supply lines were broken. Communication networks were unreliable. Leaders argued, generals blamed one another, and fear replaced the confidence that had lasted for millennia. Admiral Tikar, once the embodiment of Zalari pride, could not hide his frustration. He had believed humans were weak. He had assumed they would surrender, beg for mercy, or die quietly. Instead, humans had survived every attack, adapted to every trap, and turned every weakness of the Empire into a strength. They are everywhere, Tikar admitted to his council. We cannot predict them. We cannot control them. And worst of all, we cannot defeat them. On Earth, human children listened to stories of Mara, Jaren, and their crew. The tales of survival, courage, and cleverness inspired a new generation. Even in the most distant colonies, young humans trained, studied, and learned, knowing they could achieve greatness. The legends were not just about battles. They were about thinking differently, surviving against impossible odds, and never giving up. Mara visited a liberated planet, where humans were rebuilding after years of oppression under the Zalari. Children ran through the streets, laughing freely for the first time. Adults worked together to restore what had been lost. And in the quiet of the evening, Mara walked among them, realizing the true power of humanity. Not the weapons, not the ships, not the victories, but the spirit. We did not just fight, she said softly. We showed that humans are more than survival. We showed that we are capable of greatness. The Zalari still existed, but their empire was no longer absolute. Their arrogance had been shattered. They had learned a painful truth. No civilization, no matter how powerful, could underestimate humans. For the first time in history, the galaxy had a species that could challenge the most powerful forces without fear, without arrogance, and without surrender. Mara's crew gathered one last time, looking out at the stars. Every face reflected determination, pride, and hope. They had faced impossible odds, survived against the greatest empire in history, and changed the course of the galaxy. They called us primitive, Mara said, her voice echoing through the bridge. And now they call us legends. But the story did not end there. Mara knew the galaxy was vast, full of mysteries, dangers, and civilizations far stronger than even the Zalari. Humans had grown, learned, and survived, but they were just beginning. Every challenge ahead would test them, but the humans' advantage was clear. They were clever, adaptable, and united. They could overcome anything. In the heart of the galaxy, the Zalari Emperor received the final reports. Fleet after fleet had been defeated or crippled. Colonies had been liberated. Humans had struck at the very core of the empire. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Emperor felt fear. They are not just survivors, he whispered. They are unstoppable. Across the liberated systems, humans celebrated quietly. There was no arrogance in their victory, only understanding. They had learned that power was not just about weapons or fleets. It was about courage, intelligence, and unity. They had survived when the odds were impossible, and they had grown stronger because of it. Mara looked at the stars once more. The humans' journey had begun with survival. It had continued with clever strikes, daring tactics, and small victories. Now it was about legacy. They had proven to the galaxy and to themselves that humans could challenge the most powerful civilizations, overcome impossible odds, and rise to greatness. The galaxy will remember us, Mara said softly. Not because we were strong, but because we were clever, brave, and unstoppable. Humans are not just survivors, we are legends. And so, the humans' place in galactic history was sealed. Once dismissed as weak and primitive, they had become a force that no civilization could ignore. They had survived, adapted, and triumphed where others had failed. They had turned fear into courage, weakness into strength, and survival into legend. The galaxy had watched as humans rose, and it had learned a lesson no empire would ever forget. Never underestimate a species that refuses to give up, never underestimate the courage of the weak, and never underestimate the mind of a human. From the stars, humans had found their strength. And now, the galaxy would remember their name forever.